Let's Talk with Keith Spera is underwritten by the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation.
Hello, I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Welcome to Let's Talk. My guest today grew up as a child of Pontchartrain Beach, the amusement park founded by his family. His decades-long career as a stage and screen actor spans Broadway to the acclaimed TV series Mad Men, as well as emceeing the Royal Sonesta's annual Greasing of the Poles during Mardi Gras. He is the 2024 Celluloid Hero for the New Orleans Film Society's Gala and the proprietor of Magazine Street home decor shop Hazelnut. Here to talk about all that and more is Bryan Batt. Bryan, welcome to Let's Talk.
Glad to be here, Keith. Thank you for having me.
I'm going to start off with a quiz.
Sure.
For you.
Gosh. Okay. I didn't know I was going to be tested today.
Yes, it's a quiz. Can you tell me what this is?
That's a piece of the Zephyr.
Oh my gosh! How did you know it that quickly?
Because I have a very little one.
Do you really?
That is a big chunk of the Zephyr, yeah.
For those who are just listening, I just pulled out a jagged piece of 2x4 with a little chipped white paint, and yes, indeed, it was part of the superstructure of the Zephyr, which a teenage me went and salvaged when they were tearing the thing
you know,
down.
I wrote a book because when the tricentennial was coming, I realized that no one had really documented the phenomenon that was Pontchartrain Beach here, you know, in the city for years. That was the brainchild of my grandfather. And my friend Katie Danos and partner at Hazelnut, she and I wrote another book together, Big Easy Style, which are interiors of New Orleans. But I found a box. When my mom passed away, I went through the garage and I found a box of all this memorabilia that was from my father's desk and from my father that we had not seen since the beach closed. So I opened it up and just all these memories came back, and I remember if I felt these, you know, what did everyone else feel? And still to this day people stop me and say, oh my God, Batt, that's Pontchartrain Beach. And then I think the same year was somewhere of the Endymion. My brother and I met with the Kerns and the then captain of Endymion, Nunez, about the float, the biggest float in the Pontchartrain Beach. And then to see that, you know, I said, I've got to do it. So the book's called Pontchartrain Beach, A Family Affair.
Now the Endymion multi-float thing. I mean, what was 9 co-joined floats. It floats all the famous rides at Pontchartrain.
Yeah, the Zephyr. But the story of the Zephyr is in the book, and it's really quite fascinating. My grandfather was built by the preeminent roller coaster manufacturer in the country, and it was one of the only ones that the first dip curved.
Right.
And at one point they had to take out a certain amount of track because it was just too much.
Just too much.
Kind of think it would knock the gold out of people's teeth. Yeah.
Well, I got to say, as a 15-year-old, I enjoyed a very memorable date with a French exchange student at Pontchartrain Beach. So I thank you and your family for facilitating that.
Yeah, it's nothing like the haunted house or getting stuck on the sky ride for a little while.
Nothing like the haunted house, right? Indeed. When you appeared in the Christmas Without Tears show a couple years ago, Judith Owen's Christmas Without Tears show.
I love Judith. I just had dinner with Judith and Harry the other night. They're
fabulous,
great.
Fabulous. You did a Gilda Radner routine song that you had seen her perform on Broadway.
It was our first Broadway show I saw.
First Broadway show you saw, and you said a line during that show. You said something about how when you were kids, your brother wanted Sugar Bowl tickets and you wanted Broadway tickets.
Yes, pretty much. And as it turns out, he was on the Sugar Bowl committee and president of the Sugar Bowl for many years, and I was at 9 Broadway shows. So, you know, dreams can come true. But that was my first Broadway show I saw, and it's a fun story. My mom and my grandmother were taking me up and all excited, and my mother had gotten all the tickets, and then she said, is there anything that you want to see? And I'm like, looking through the New York Magazine, I was so into Saturday Night Live. I think it was like the first or second season, and Gilda Radner had Gilda Radner live from the Winter Garden Theater. Yep. And my mom we dropped off the luggage. My mom ran to the box office, sold out, couldn't get a ticket. And of course, if anyone knew my mother, she was a quintessential Southern belle and a steel magnolia and the real thing. It wasn't faked. And within seconds, she had the last 3 seats, turned on the charm, but they were in the box. So we ran back, got dressed, and that's when you used to dress for the theater.
Sure,
My grandmother had on gloves.
Gloves.
So we're sitting in the box, and Gilda Radner comes out, and the first thing she sings is "Let's Talk Dirty to the Animals," in which she proceeds in like this childish little song. She'd let out every 4-letter bomb you could possibly, and I thought, my grandmother's very proper, and I thought, she's going to grab me by the scruff of the neck and drag me and throw me in a cab, but I'm never going to see another Broadway show. And I looked back, and there they were, my mother, my grandmother, tears of laughter streaming down their face. So that was a great introduction to Broadway. Later on, years later, when my grandmother her health was failing and she was, going in and out of it, I was visiting home, and one time she said, "How is that little girl that we saw in that show that was so funny?" And I didn't have the heart to tell her that Gilda Radner had passed away. Oh. But, I got to see so many great performances, in my years in New York. I just did a play last year. Mm-hmm. At the Signature called Pay the Writer, which was so much fun. And while I was there, I got to see a bunch of things. And you forget, like that in New York, it's not what can we do tonight, it's what can we not do.
Right.
And when you live there for a long time, like I did, you get into your groove. I mean, also, you're doing a Broadway show, you're doing 8 shows a week. You don't really want to go on your night off
to a show.
But usually would always be doing a benefit or a fundraiser on the night off or whatever. But the same thing in New Orleans, you don't know what you have until it's almost taken away, and Katrina really taught us that. And I think even when I moved to New York right after college, I always would come home. Mm-hmm. I always would come home, and I think, they were wrong. You can go home again if it's New Orleans.
Absolutely, absolutely. You were in years in New York. You were in both Beauty and the Beast.
Let's see if I can remember.
Cats.
Cats, Starlight Express, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, La Cage aux Folles, Seussical the Musical, and Scarlet Pimpernel. I think that's
Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Fever.
Saturday Night Fever.
That was a fun one.
Saturday Night Fever.
I got to sing Disco Inferno. Disco Duck, wearing a huge Yanni looking like a wig and a huge ugly mustache, and I thought, man, the ghost of George Gershwin is going to come pull us down into the depths of hell for singing that. But
was that the role that earned you a caricature in Sardi's?
Yes, that was the one.
Which is a sign you've made it.
Yes. Yeah, well, I still am shocked, and they keep it in front. Like you walk into Sardi's, and there are these 2 or 3 rows of the caricatures in the front bar, like before you go into the restaurant, and mine's still there. And I like going, guys, I haven't been in a Broadway show in a while. I guess we like you. And I would go, and I never really went to Sardi's that much. But what happened was, the reason why that happened, and my character in that show was really kind of fun. And the show was not that well received by the critics, but I got really nice notices. Okay. And the offices, Sardi's, besides having the building, the restaurant has office building. Mm-hmm. It's an office building. And the producers had office space there. So they offered, Sardi's and some of the waiters, tickets to the show and previews to see what that. So then they came back and they said, "You're going to do our leads for the character show, right?" He goes, "No, we want to do Bryan." So
really?
That's how that happened.
Very good, very good. I got to tell you, I don't get Cats. I don't understand that.
I did it for 2 years. I still don't get it.
Okay, good. I'm not alone then.
I think it's, it was a very big environmental, theater where, you're immersed into the set and it was all around you. And it was a clever idea. I don't think they had any idea that this would turn into what it did.
Yeah.
And people have asked me, and I got in trouble once. I said, yeah, I do, because I said, people don't know what the hell it's about. And the producer's like, wait a minute. But I think there's something about, people want to identify themselves with an animal. Now, some people are cat people, some people are dog people, but they like to see they try to find human characteristics in the animals. Right. It's based on T.S. Eliot's book of Practical Cats, so some of the poems are very clever. And it's just this little review of, these little poems, and my favorite story about this is the late Laurie Beechman, God rest her soul, immense talent, was one of the Grisabellas. And I think she was the first Grisabella on the first national tour, then they brought her to Broadway, and then I did it with her for several years. So these women were sitting, the matinee women were sitting there, and one woman says, cats, what's this about cats? And she goes, what is this about? And someone said, oh, I've seen it 3 times. Okay, it's about this very sick cat. Her name's Griselda. She gets very sick. All her friends put on this show, try to cheer her up. It doesn't work. So they stick her on a tire and blow her through the ceiling.
Well, there you go.
That's it.
Cats
That's
in
cats,
15 seconds.
Cats from your Yenta in Boston, yeah.
If you're just tuning in, my guest today is actor Bryan Batt. Your first TV role, I think, was on As the World Turns.
Well, I think I was a waiter or something. I was like, I was, you know, what upset me was there was a day player who had a recurring role, and he didn't show, he was not there. And they started prepping me to go on for it, to take it over. And he came in at the last minute, and I was like, and one of the regulars at church was like, well, there went your break. I'm like, oh, you know, showbiz.
Showbiz,
really
you got to
fun.
start somewhere. It's a long way from As the World Turns to
Yes.
Mad Men.
Yes.
Mad Men, you were on the first 3 seasons.
First 3
recurring
seasons.
character, a main character.
Regular.
The first
I was a
2
regular,
seasons.
yeah.
Yes. Sal
Sal
Romano.
Sal Romano.
Sal Romano.
Oh, there's Christina.
There she is.
Love
yes,
that
indeed.
gal. She's getting married. Okay, wait.
That was, that show, I think, certainly in your career, was the where sort of critical and commercial acclaim and success came together most.
Yes.
The most. It was a great show, great character. You played the art director at the ad firm who was a closeted gay man.
Right.
In a time when it was not a good thing to be out.
Well, if you were out, you were shunned. Could be fired.
Right.
No one. I mean, it was just unheard of. It was unheard of. Yeah.
When you were offered the role, did you have a sense that this show was going to be something special?
Well, first of all, I turned down my first audition.
Turned it down.
Turned it down.
Didn't go to the audition.
No, I just turned it down.
Why?
I'll tell you, it's a crazy story. My godchild at the time, it involves Katrina, so everyone loves a good Katrina story. My godchild, Ramsey Schmitz, who's this wonderful nurse, at the time, very young nurse at the time, Tom and I, my husband and I, were in Sonoma on vacation with some friends, and the storm was coming, and I called my mom. I said, Mom, baby, watch. She goes, don't worry, I've got a flight, I'm getting out, good. So another day goes by, my mom calls in a panic. My brother was on the city council. He was getting his family out and everything. He says, Mom, come with us. She goes, nope, I've got my flight, everything's fine. So my mom calls in a panic that her flight's been canceled. And she needed a hip replacement, a knee replacement, all this, ailments. I said, Mom, don't worry, hold tight, we're gonna figure this out. So right then, my godchild Ramsey Schmitz called, and she said, Bryan, I just got released. I don't have to stay at the hospital, but my car won't start. And I said, okay, you know where the keys are for the house. Please just go get the keys, but you're gonna have to drive my mother with you to Texas. She goes, of course. Not only did she drive my mother to Texas, but she boarded up our carriage house, put wood up, raised everything in case water came in, and did the same for our shop, Hazelnut on Magazine Street.
Wow.
So she saved, the car, the house, the store, my mom, not necessarily in that order, but
right, of course.
And everything, and then we thought, how can we thank her? So we broke the bank, and we planned this trip to Paris for her. She'd never been out of the country, and my audition for Mad Men came right in the middle of that Parisian trip, and she had taken the time off from work. We had planned everything, and Tom said, "You can't change this." And I asked my agents, can they see me before or after? Like, no, this is when they're saying. And I said, well, I'm going to have to, say no. This is more important. And I said, if they don't find who they want, I'll be more than happy to come in. So time went by. I was rehearsing a play in New York, and they called my agent, said they haven't found who they wanted. Will Bryan come in? They said, of course. I was in rehearsal, on my lunch break, ran in, walked in, read, and the next morning they called and said, you have it. It was the first time I chose life over show business. And it is a lesson that I'm so glad that I learned, and it paid off.
Yes.
Because,
yes.
There's a story about one of the actors that was offered one of the roles, and he was doing a play, and he turned down the pilot of Mad Men to do a play. So you never know what it's going to become. Now, I will say this, when I walked on set and met John Hamm, and John Hamm's character was described as an arrow collar man, I'm like, okay, you're doing this right. And then my first scene was with him, and he's phenomenal. His capacity for memory and just being in the moment, he's quite a phenomenal actor and a comedian. He's very, very funny. But he had this oration. I mean, he had pages of dialogue. And I mean, I had like 3 lines and I screwed that up, but but I got over it quickly. But I knew they were doing something right. You know, I sat across my pal Christina Hendricks at the table reading. We just like at a break, we're like, we're going to be friends, right? We're gonna be, and we still are. It was one of these magical experiences. We had no idea, and if it wasn't for the press, if it wasn't for the critics, and it wasn't for people in the media saying, watch this show. Yeah. This show's great. Remember, it was AMC. There was only, ABC, CBS, NBC, Showtime, HBO. Some of the other fledgling networks, they didn't have any programming like this. Right. This was the first high-end drama series that was, put on a network. And then no one watched AMC for
prestige TV.
For TV. Yeah. No, they watched old movies.
Right.
So the first year, our numbers first season were very, very low. Then there was the strike. And if it wasn't for the people at AMC believing in it, it would have gone by the wayside. So it was all just, but it was kind of, I remember walking in the park and my phone went off, like, something like, oh my gosh, we're nominated for Emmys and SAG Awards and all this other stuff. I was like, craziness.
This is for real.
Yeah, it was then the roller coaster.
So yeah, again, you played a closeted gay man on the show. Mm-hmm. Did that role resonate with you in a certain way?
Oh, yes.
Obviously, you've grown up in a very different time,
but still, high school and college and even after, I was very, very closeted, and I didn't know. My big fear was that I would be, shunned. My friends would not be my friends. My family would, did not maybe disown me. Thank God none of that happened, but unfortunately, it does still happen. Sure. How can you say, I love you as a child, but not now. Right. I don't get it. Something I don't get. But that's what I drew on to play the part too. Sal had to be, and also he was Italian, so I kind of used my hands a lot. And I'm not Italian. I'm German and French, but that kind of helped. But it was also, TV and film it's a totally different medium than stage. It's very similar. You just have to turn the dial down. I remember one scene. I was doing this Bye Bye Birdie thing. And my wife's in bed. I'm like, and
your wife on the show.
On the show, yes. Yeah. And I'm acting it out. And Matt came down to Matt and said, "You can do more."
Matt, the creator of the show.
Matt Weiner. It can go bigger. I said, "Matt, I did do La Cage Full on Broadway. It could get really.
It could get really big.
It could be really big." He's like, "Okay." But it was one of those blessed experiences. I've had several. Like also Jeffrey, a play that I did off Broadway by Paul Rudnick, and then I got to keep my role in the film and play opposite Patrick Stewart, and we're still friends. And then to be in the original company of Sunset Boulevard, that's the other one I forgot. Sunset Boulevard on Broadway, which was like the biggest hit at the time on Broadway with Glenn Close, and then I did with Betty Buckley and became very close with her. Those kind of monumentous moments in the career. But that's what it's very fitting that you brought a piece of the Zephyr, because it is a roller coaster. When you're an actor, it goes up and down, and you never know, the peaks and the valleys, and you just have to appreciate it when you're in it.
That's right. See, I didn't even know I was making a metaphor for your career by bringing a piece of a roller coaster.
Yeah, you certainly did.
If you're just tuning in, my guest today is actor Bryan Batt. Perhaps your most fabulous role is the MC of the greasing of the poles at Mardi Gras. You have worn some amazing costumes over the years for that. Do you come up with your own
Yes,
outfits?
Of course.
Yeah?
Okay, there I was Apollo, the sun god, because it was my 56th birthday, and so many men in my family died at 55 that when we had, when we turned 56, we have a party. So it was my birthday, so I had a gods and goddesses party, so I was Apollo, the god of youth. There, I don't know what I was. I was just kind of, some
It's like some sort of Shakespearean town crier or something.
That's what I was.
Maybe?
Something like that.
That's what you're meant to be.
Just went to the costume closet. This year the theme was Revolution because they're renovating the restaurant Revolution, and I thought everyone's going to be dressed as the French Revolution or the American Revolution. I went as the Industrial Revolution. So I had smokestacks on my hat and gears and stuff like that. There's some other ones. I just, Tom said, they asked me to do this many, many years ago, and I agreed. And Tom said, my husband, he goes like, you will go to the opening of a can of tuna, won't you? And he goes, the greasing of the poles. So I did it, and I had so much fun, and it was just so random, and but it's so New Orleans, right? It's so great, and it's now this big production. This year, the entire block was packed with people on Bourbon Street. Wow. The entire block, it was full, about wall to wall, and it's really just great, silly fun.
It is, and you said it, that's the quintessential New Orleans event because it's a little bit naughty, it's a little bit ridiculous, it's like all that stuff, and it's a lot of fun, and people can just,
And you're drinking at 10 a.m., you're having a Bloody Mary, and I love the Friday before Mardi Gras. It's really the kickoff for the long,
Right.
The big hurrah.
You can feel the roller coaster start to go down the hill. It's leaving to head down.
Exactly.
So, yes.
And I love Mardi Gras on so many different levels. It's I've been so privileged to be involved in all different aspects. I was a monarch in Orpheus, which is just such a glorious parade. Sonny Bory and Derek Franklin do the most incredible job. It's absolutely beautiful. And then last year I rode with my brother on his float in Rex, which was wonderful because we were on the buses going back to the den, I think at 1:30. Not this year. There was some delays. That's got to be fixed up. Something has to be done.
Yes.
And other things, Mardi Gras. I really love going down to the St. Anne parade in the Marigny. That's what we do with a bunch of friends, and then walk our way into the quarter. And it's just, and I love seeing, everyone there's something for everybody, And for many years, we did the Avenue, because we lived actually on the parade route. You don't know how many friends you have until you live on the parade route on St. Charles. And then, I recently, my brother was moving, and there are these big tubs that I think were from my mother's house. And I said, Jay, they're just more pictures and slides, and we have enough. And he goes, just see what they are. So I took them to a wonderful place, I think it's called Memory Lane across the river. And they'll take your video and your 8mm films or your slides and put them on discs and everything. It's really great. And there were all these pictures that we had never seen. All these pictures from Mardi Gras, and many years Jay was Batman and I had to be Robin. Or we were
perennial Robin,
right? And here I go,
little brother,
a cast of like a bunch of clowns or whatever. And it was because my grandmother lived on St. Charles and Milan. It just kills me to say Milan. It's Milan. But back then, I think Rex was one of the only parades, or the very few parades that would go do that St. Charles route.
Right.
Back then, a lot of parades had their own different routes, especially the neighborhood parades. But we would always go to her home for Mardi Gras.
Incredible memories from that. Speaking of your mom, you actually wrote a book about your mother.
Yes. She ain't heavy. She's my mother. Yeah.
And it came out 2010.
Right before she passed away.
That's what I said. Did she get to see it?
She did. She went to the first book signing.
She did.
At Commander's Palace. Yeah, they had a wonderful book signing. And it's really a love letter to the city and to a wonderful. I was really lucky. I really lucked out in the mom department. I knew early on that I was loved unconditionally, and she was not a pushover.
Yeah.
You thought, like I said, a steel magnolia, but strong. Oh my gosh, strong, and instilled, I think, some great values with me. And she also had a love of the theater, and she had a love of the arts, which was, that kind of helped.
Well, I'd say having that kind of support was one of the things that gave you the launching pad for your career, I guess.
To tell the truth, in my play that I wrote, a play called Dear Mr. Williams that we did at Le Petit, and hopefully it will be off Broadway soon. There's producers that want to move it, so we'll see. But my father did not really want me to be an actor. He was dead set against it. My mother, was a very, devoted wife, and she was trying to help, guide me.
Right.
And I was doing a show at Liberty Theater. They were doing a benefit performance, and they were dedicating the lobby to Helen Hayes. People don't know Helen Hayes was the first lady of the American stage, big Broadway star. The person who was doing heading the gala got sick. They said, "Can anyone do this?" I'm like, "My mom can." My mom took over. It was a beautiful event. She met Helen Hayes. After the show, Helen Hayes said to my mother and father, "Are you related to the young man that was in the show?" And she goes, "Yes, he wants to be an actor." And my father's like, "We're trying to discourage him because it's a..." And she says, "Oh, Mr. Batt, you should encourage him. He's very good."
Wow,
So
that's an endorsement.
the next day, get this, because my mom could charm, she could get Abbott to give you Costello. I mean, so the next day, Helen Hayes invited them to brunch and convinced my father to let me move to New York and be an actor.
Wow.
If it wasn't for Libertine or all these things coming together, that I just happened to be in this show, I happened to raise my hand. And after that, now that was my junior year, I think my mom joined the board after I moved to New York or something, but we've been connected with that for years. I was on the board for years too.
And Helen Hayes greased the wheels of your career.
Right?
And now you're the celluloid hero for the New Orleans Film Society.
Celluloid hero, which is going to be a fun event. It's going to be on April 13th, and you can go to the Film Society website to get tickets. I'll be there. And I'm also emceeing an event for, for Kids Smart, which is a great organization. That's on March 21st.
You're doing stuff.
Well, I'm doing something. And also it's like people call all the time, and if I can do it, I can do it. If I can't, I can't. And also, I'm emceeing the Stella Screaming contest for the Tennessee Williams Festival.
Another great, ridiculous New Orleans event.
Right?
So,
it's like someone said, "What do you love most about New Orleans?" And I said, "There's so many things to love. The food, the architecture, but it's the joie de vivre, the fact that we will celebrate everything, life, death, and everything in between, and we will make up an excuse to celebrate."
Amen. And you've done a lot of that over your course of your career, so I wish you continued success.
Thank you.
And keep doing fun things. And thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Keith.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you all for tuning in. I'm Keith Spera. This has been Let's Talk.
Let's Talk with Keith Spera is underwritten by the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation.